good morning, good evening. I hope you're all having a great day. I am here to finish off our 2024 wrap-up. So this is everything I read in December. So let's jump into it. Here we go with our stats. So we had 6 books, 1,532 pages, which is about 49 pages a day. 2 new authors, 4 authors I've read from before, 5 were audiobooks and 1 was physically read. We had 1 standalone and 5 a part of a series. So we had 1 science fiction, 1 fantasy, 2 romance, Check and Mate, and It Starts With Us. And then Promises and Pomegranates is a dark romance, which technically has a little novella at the end, which Goodreads counts as 2 books, so I guess I'm counting it as 2 books. I don't know. Goodreads says it's 2 books, so I'm going with it. Starting off strong, we got Check and Mate by Hazelwood. This was my first Hazelwood, and I loved this book. I gave it 4 stars, but looking back, I probably would give it 4.5 stars because I really enjoyed this. This was such a good time. I read this for my 24-hour reading challenge, and so I do go into more details in that video if you want more information. But this is essentially about a girl who decides to get back into chess and is going around to chess tournaments and ends up getting into this romantic relationship while balancing these chess tournaments and kind of the drama that goes along with her playing chess for different reasons that you find out in the story. If you've watched The Queen's Gambit on Netflix, you would definitely like this book. It was pretty much not the exact same thing, but in that show, she's going around to the tournaments and playing all the different games and going against rival chess players. It's just fast-paced and entertaining. We have all of that in this book, but we also have a romance element added, which I just loved. I do like playing chess myself, so this was just such a great story, and I'm really glad I got around to it. Next up, I read Destroy Me by Tahereh Mafi. This is a novella book that has 2 novellas, Destroy Me and Fracture Me. So the first book in the series is Shatter Me, which I read back in November and gave 3 stars. And then there's Destroy Me, the little side novella. Then there's the second book, Unravel Me. And then you come back to Fracture Me. Why they did it like this, I don't know. But I finished Destroy Me, and this follows Warner's perspective. And you get to know a lot more about him and his character. You also get to follow along with his thoughts on what happened at the end of Shatter Me. And I loved it. I loved it way more than I expected. I thought it was a good time. I got to know him as a character more, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. It was only 110 pages, so very quick read, and it was a good time. It really made me want to keep going in the series, even though I didn't like Shatter Me. Not that I didn't like Shatter Me. Shatter Me I gave 3 stars, so it was just average. But this has made me excited to continue in the series, and I'm excited to keep going. I'm hoping to get to Unravel Me this month, but we'll see. I've got a lot of other stuff on my TBR. Yeah, there's not really much more to say about the novella. It's a very short, quick kind of like insight into Warner's mind, and then we're moving on. And plus, like, I don't want to spoil anything for the series, so I don't want to like tell you kind of what the plot is. 4 stars. I definitely would not skip this novella if you're reading this series. Like, I felt it provided a lot more insight on what Warner is going through in his life and why he's doing the things that he's doing. Next up, I read It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. This is the second book. The first one is It Ends With Us. And the first one I gave 3 stars. This second one I also gave 3 stars. I am glad I read this and finished out the series, and I knew I wanted to finish out the series sooner than later, because if I didn't pick it up now, I probably just would have lost interest altogether and just would have never gotten to it. So I'm glad I finished it. I did even though I gave both of them 3 stars, I did like It Starts With Us better than It Ends With Us, just because I kind of knew what the story was going in to this one versus It Ends With Us. Was I felt the marketing was just not good for that. At the end of It Ends With Us, our main character, Lily, is getting out of a domestic violence situation. And in this book, she is dealing with co-parenting and the hardship of being in a relationship like that while also trying to move on to someone else. So the romance of this was good. I liked it. It was a good time. I enjoyed the romance between our female main character and our male main character. But I think I just am not a contemporary real life romance lover. I really need like a fantasy element. I need something to kind of keep me entertained. This dealt with a lot of what I consider real people problems, which I thought it did a really good job at showing all of the real stuff that goes with having that situation happen to you, which is really important to like have resources like that. But for me, that's not my love of romance books. So I didn't love it as much as I was hoping for, but I'm glad that I finished this out. It does have a lot of good conversations in here. I would recommend this book for anyone who did like It Ends With Us. I do think that you would enjoy It Starts With Us. A lot, actually, probably more than It Ends With Us. But if you didn't like It Ends With Us, or you just were like okay with it and you weren't sure about doing this one, I wouldn't suggest it. It ties everything up great, but I wouldn't say you're gonna like absolutely fall in love with this book if you didn't like the first one. So 3 stars though. I'm glad to finish it out. The next one is The Ark by Ben Oliver. This is the third and final book in the trilogy. The first one is The Loop. I've talked about this series quite a lot, I feel, and I feel like I'm a little disappointed with where this trilogy has gone. I gave this 3 stars, so I didn't hate it, but I definitely was pushing myself through it just to like be done with the trilogy. And I can't really say much about the plot because otherwise I'd be spoiling the other 2 books. But essentially, we have artificial intelligence named Happy who is trying to take over the world. And our main character, Luca, is trying to prevent that from happening. I just was a bit disappointed with the way the trilogy went. It just felt like it was kind of repeating the same kind of, he'd run into an issue, he'd kind of ignore the issue, he'd later on run into the issue again and then ignore it, and then it was like the same bad character was coming back to like fight our main character, and I just was kind of getting over it. I'm glad I have the whole trilogy done, but I don't know, that's where it's hard. I'm like, okay, well, the first one, The Loop, I feel like I would recommend that one. And there are going to be people out there that love this series and love science fiction, but I don't really have much else to say about this. I did read this in the 24-hour reading challenge as well. So if you do want more details on my feelings, feel free to jump over there. But for now, we'll just leave it at that. Alrighty, next up we got Promises and Pomegranates by Sav R. Miller. This is a dark romance. The first portion, or I guess technically the last portion, is the prequel to this story. So it's about like 70 pages of the prequel to this portion. And on Goodreads, it technically counts them as 2 separate books. So technically, Sweet Sin, which is the novella, I gave 2.5 stars. It's just kind of the introduction, the prologue of our 2 main characters, Cal and Elena, meeting and kind of starting their romantic feelings for each other. This does start with a pain equals pleasure trope, which is not my favorite, which is why I think I gave it a lower rating. I didn't feel like the writing was the best, but again, I did buy the book, so I wanted to give Promises and Pomegranates, the actual novel, a chance, even though I only gave the novella a 2.5 star. The main Promises and Pomegranates, I gave it 3 stars, and it wasn't terrible. It just wasn't necessarily my cup of tea for dark romance. There wasn't necessarily anything wrong with it. Like, the writing was not the best, but it definitely wasn't terrible. It definitely felt really long. Like, I don't know if this needed to really be a 400-page novel, but I'm glad I finished it out. I did started out physically reading it and was just not able to really get into it, so I did download the audiobook, and that definitely made it go by a lot quicker. This also has the trope of arranged marriage between our female main character and another man, and our male main character swoops in and takes the girl. This is a series. It's not a continuation of these two people's romance. It's like companion novels where the next, like, I think there's like 5 more, but they all follow different couples within the same universe, I'm pretty sure. And I'm not sure if I want to continue. The second book doesn't really have a synopsis that I'm interested in, but like the 3rd through 5th books, those all seem interesting to me. So I'm not sure if I can skip the second one and just go to the 3rd book, or if I need to push through the second one. I'm on a book buying ban, so I'm not going to be buying the second or whatever anytime soon. But in the future, maybe if I see it, I might grab it. But again, there were some elements to the romance that I liked, and there were some elements to the romance I definitely didn't. There was some drama that came up with our male main character and our female main character's parents, and there was just kind of this weird dynamic of our main character Cal having this relationship with the parents of Elaine, and it was just, I don't know, it was just kind of getting odd. Out of all the dark romance I've read, I just wouldn't necessarily recommend this one. I don't know, not really much else to say about this without kind of giving more of the plot away. It's a Hades Persephone, not retelling, but maybe like loosely based is probably what I would say. Plus, the author likes to remind you every couple chapters that it's a Hades and Persephone inspired story, as if we've forgotten a couple chapters ago. And in the introduction, and in the prologue, and in the acknowledgments, and there was like a special letter to the reader at the beginning that also said it. And this edition of the book also has little footnotes from the author and what she kind of was thinking as she was writing this story, which then she brings up the Hades Persephone. And it's just like, we get it. I get it. It's inspired by that. You don't need to tell me 20 times. I got it. It wasn't the worst. 3 stars, and I'm moving on. And there we have it. Those were the 6 books I read in December. I hope that my 2025 reading year is filled with 5 stars, and I hope that you also have a year full of 5-star reads. Also, for the month of December, my favorite song was Palm of My Hands by John Summit, the Odd Mob remix version, which is just so good, and I suggest giving it a listen. But until next time, I will see you later. Bye!